The world is loud, and it is full of people trying to shout over one another. But history is whispered. If you are feeling the weight of the day on your shoulders, you can set it down now. You are safe here. Tonight, we are going to a place where silence is the only language spoken. We are traveling to the heart of Rome, past the Swiss guards, and into the forbidden corridors of the Vatican Secret Archives. You are going to hear the story of a woman who was erased by the powers that be, and the grandmother who left her a brass key to a cabinet that officially does not exist. It is a tale of the Borgias, of poisons hidden in pharmacy ledgers, and of the quiet, patient victory of truth over power. But before we turn the heavy iron key in the lock, I need to know who is standing watch with me tonight. The archives can be a lonely place in the dark. So use your final bit of energy to gently type the name of the city where you are sleeping tonight. Whether you are in London, Sydney, or a quiet town with no name, let's light up the map in the comments. Let's see how far our secret society reaches. If you are ready to uncover what has been hidden for 500 years, tap the like button gently. Consider it your signature on the entrance log. Now, unclench your jaw. Let your breath slow down to the rhythm of turning pages. The library is open, and the story begins now. The bells of Rome ring 7 times, but inside the Vatican reading room, you hear only the whisper of turning pages. You hear the soft scrape of your grandmother's brass key against paper. You breathe in beeswax and centuries-old vellum, that particular sweetness that clings to documents that have outlived empires. The stone beneath your palms is cold, colder than it should be in May. And you wonder if this is what erasure feels like before it happens. The junior guard doesn't meet your eyes when he slides your application back across the mahogany desk. His smile is practiced, neutral, the kind that says nothing and everything at once. I'm sorry, but you're not on the list. Those 7 words hang in the air like incense, thick and choking. You've waited 14 months for this moment, submitted every document, every credential, every proof of your decade studying the Borgia papers. But here, in these hallowed halls where truth supposedly lives eternal, your name simply doesn't exist. You clutch the brass key harder, your grandmother's, etched with tiny grapevines worn smooth by her fingers during countless rosaries. She used to whisper about the archives, about doors that stayed locked not to protect the past, but to control who gets to tell it. Some keys, she'd say, threading this very brass piece through her weathered hands, open more than doors, Cara. They open silences. 2 days later, sitting in the back row of the Pontifical Conference, you watch your research bloom on screen in perfect PowerPoint precision. Every citation, every connection you spent years uncovering, presented by Professor Monteverde with the confidence of ownership. Your title, Cantarella and Commerce, new evidence from the Borgia pharmaceutical ledgers, has been sanitized. It is now recent discoveries in Vatican archives. Your name appears nowhere, not in the footnotes, not in the acknowledgements, not even in the whispered conversations during coffee breaks. The timestamp on the rejection email burns in your memory. 14:47, May 3rd. The same afternoon, Monteverdi's assistant requested your preliminary notes for collaborative review. You trace your finger over the conference program, where someone has drawn a neat line through your scheduled presentation. The ink is black, deliberate, final. This is how they do it, not with violence but with silence, not with theft but with the simple act of pretending you were never there at all. Outside, Rome's bells continue their ancient conversation, but inside this room, full of scholars and guardians of history, you understand with crystalline clarity, you are not being rejected, you are being erased. And somewhere in your bag, that brass key grows heavier, as if it knows what you don't yet. That some doors aren't meant to be opened, they're meant to be broken. The Tiber moves slowly here, carrying centuries of secrets toward the sea. And you sit on its banks, writing 2 sentences that will become your scripture. No speculation, only receipts. Let the documents speak louder than rumors ever could. The rage from yesterday has crystallized into something harder, cleaner, not revenge, but resolution. You've seen enough academic theater to know that spectacle only feeds the machine. Silence, real silence, the kind that gathers evidence like a patient collector, that's the blade they never see coming. You think about them now, your antagonists, and realize they're not monsters, but something more dangerous. Humans protecting their small kingdoms. The archivist who guards those brittle bindings like a mother guards a fevered child, terrified that one wrong touch will turn history to dust. The Monsignor whose emails always arrive at exactly 6 p.m. Rome time, worried that every new discovery about the Borgias will inflame faithful hearts. Professor Monteverdi, whose grant renewal depends on presenting a church triumphant over its dark past. Not mired in pharmaceutical ledgers and poison receipts. They're not evil, they're afraid, and fear makes people do terrible, ordinary things. Your grandmother's brass key weighs differently now in your pocket. You pull out the note she left, penciled on the back of a prayer card, Armadio 42. And for the 100th time, you search the Vatican's public catalogues. Nothing, no Cabinet 42 in any accessible inventory. But Nonna knew things, whispered them between decades of the Rosary. And if she left you a key to a door that doesn't officially exist, then perhaps the real question isn't where, but when. The dehumidifiers in the reading room hummed the same frequency as her old oxygen machine. Maybe that's why you notice them, why you remember their pitch, their constancy, white noise hiding deeper frequencies. 10 years ago, a senior colleague patted your shoulder at a conference in Florence. He said, "Let the men handle the Borgia myths, dear. It's complicated." You smiled then, nodded even, because you hadn't yet learned that quiet isn't surrender, it's strategy. You've watched them for a decade now, these men who handle myths. Watch them smooth rough edges and sand down inconvenient truths until history looks like a polished marble saint. The church presents order, papal bulls, official registers, clean succession. The Republic of Letters offers chaos, diplomatic gossip, poisoned dinners, bodies in the Tiber. Your truth lives somewhere between, in notarial deeds and pharmaceutical receipts, in the space where mythology meets merchant ledgers. The stakes couldn't be clearer. Your savings account holds €12,000, enough for 6 months if you're careful. The lawyer's memo sits in your bag. 3 pages of warnings about Italian defamation law and Vatican copyright. One wrong citation, one unsubstantiated claim, and they could destroy you financially. But documents don't lie, even when the people guarding them do. To read in the Archivio Apostolico Vaticano requires a letter of introduction, 14 business days for processing. It requires proof of academic purpose and a slot booked months in advance. Each reproduction costs between 0.6 and €3, depending on the document's age and condition. A publication requires written permission. Your spreadsheet shows the math. Flights, hotels, image rights, legal review, €18,000 minimum. More than you have, but you've learned something about closed doors. Sometimes you don't need to break them down. Sometimes you just need to find another entrance. The plan forms like a constellation, each archive a star in your navigation. The Vatican registers, Reg, Vat, Armadio I through XVII, hold the official story. The Archivio di Stato di Ferrara keeps notarial deeds, the boring, beautiful evidence of daily life. Venice hoards Marin Sanudo's diplomatic diaries, 16,000 pages of gossip dressed as intelligence. Simancas protects Spanish court dispatches, where ambassadors wrote truth in cipher. 4 archives, 4 perspectives, and somewhere in their overlap, the real story waits. You'll triangulate like a surveyor, marking points where documents agree, knotting where they diverge. A corroboration versus gossip, receipts versus rumors. Your rules are surgical. Quote only primary text, never paraphrase. Date every claim to the day when possible. Preserve chain of custody like evidence in a criminal trial. If one door closes, pivot to another venue but keep the thread intact. You schedule calls. A conservator in Ferrara, a rights manager in Venice, an E&O insurance attorney in Milan. 6 months, you tell yourself. Weekly deliverables. Contingency time for the days when every door stays locked. You've been told to leave this to the experts. So many times, the words have worn smooth like prayer beads. But expertise isn't just knowledge, it's access. And if they won't grant you access, you'll find your own doors. If you've ever been told the same, if you've ever stood outside a locked room holding a key that supposedly opens nothing, tell me, which door did you open anyway? Some of us weren't born to be gatekeepers. We were born to walk through walls. The work becomes a fever dream of documents, each receipt a small victory against erasure. Screenshot, Vatican application VAT 202-40847, submitted pending. Screenshot, reading room request numbers RR1247 through RR1263, all marked under review. Your laptop screen fills with evidence of trying, proof that you knocked on every door properly before they made you find windows. The Teams call with your lawyer runs 43 minutes. She shares her screen, shows you exactly where the boundaries are. She shows you which words could bankrupt you, which truths need 3 sources before you can whisper them aloud. Document everything, she says, and you almost laugh because that's all you've ever done. The stamped receipt from Ferrara arrives like a benediction, approved, scheduled, September 14th, 9 a.m. sharp. Your WhatsApp pings at midnight. The Venetian librarian, working late, sends photos of Sanudo's diary indices. Page 447 might interest you, she writes, followed by a winking emoji that feels like conspiracy. These aren't anecdotes anymore. They're artifacts, each one numbered, dated, stamped with the authority of institutions. Institutions that can't later claim ignorance. You build your ledger methodically. Every email, every receipt, every timestamp. Evidence of evidence, receipts of receipts. Then the cease and desist arrives. Protocol number CDL 202-41892, delivered by courier on a Tuesday morning that smells like rain. The external law firm's letterhead is impressive. Gold embossing, Latin motto, an address near the Spanish Steps. 10 business days to respond or face immediate legal action to protect the historical integrity and reputation of ecclesiastical archives. Your hands don't shake anymore. They've learned stillness. Your lawyer responds within 6 hours, her reply a masterpiece of respectful deflection. A pre-publication review offered, opportunity for comment included. Every sentence calibrated to say, pressure meets process and process wins. She attaches your research protocols, your source standards, your commitment to scholarly rigor. The cease and desist becomes just another document in your growing collection, filed under attempted suppression, 2024. But Ferrara changes everything. The email arrives at 3 p.m. on a Thursday, the archivist's excitement barely contained in formal Italian. Dottoressa, we have located something unusual. Notary Serafini, 1496, a property deed for a spesaria near Via dei Banchi, transferred to a procurator for DR. The initials stop your breath. Domenico Rodrigo, the name Rodrigo Borgia used in property transactions. Not a smoking gun, not yet, but a hinge on which the whole door might swing open. A pharmacy. The Borgias owned a pharmacy. Suddenly, every poison rumor, every whispered accusation of Cantarella has a supply chain. The Vatican makes you wait 60 days for access to a fragile register, claiming conservation concerns. You pay €320 to Ferrara for high-resolution images, each one watermarked, restricted, precious. The lab in Milan wants €400 to run XRF analysis on the deed's marginalia, to fingerprint the iron gall ink and date the later annotations. You pay it all, document it all, the money bleeding out as evidence flows in. This is what they don't tell you about fighting institutional silence. It's expensive, slow, death by 1,000 fees. The metallic click of cabinet locks becomes your soundtrack. Each archive has its own pitch, its own resistance. Ferrara's locks sing higher, almost cheerful. Venice's grunt open like they're tired. The Vatican's whisper promises before clicking shut. You photograph every wax seal before breaking it, catching how candlelight turns red wax into blood. How centuries have hardened secrets into something you need a knife to open. The scanners hum different frequencies in different cities. Ferrara's stutters, Venice's purrs. The Vatican's maintains a monotone that sounds like prayer or warning. Your phone rings constantly now. Journalists who have heard rumors, academics who want to collaborate now that you're dangerous. Family asking if you're all right. You let them all go to voicemail. The only sound that matters is paper speaking truth. The ledger from Ferrara speaks first, and its voice is mundane, which makes it devastating. A 1497 account book, barely legible, lists purchases for the Spesaria. Orpimento, 4 libber. Arsenico Bianco, 2 libber. Delivered to the household of Signor G under the mark of the procurator. Orpiment, gold and arsenic sulfide, white arsenic. The ingredients of Cantarella, that legendary Borgia poison, recorded not in an assassin's confession, but in a pharmacy ledger. Business records, receipts. The Spanish dispatch from Simancas confirms what Venice whispers. Cantarella appears in 3 separate ambassadorial reports, not as legend, but as court slang. The usual cups were prepared, writes the Venetian diarist in 1503, describing a dinner where 2 guests died within days. A cross-checked terminology, triangulated truth. The poison wasn't mythology, it was methodology. And now you have the receipts. But the 1897 letter stops your heart. Found in a private family packet that somehow relates to the same notarial series, sealed with red wax bearing the cardinal's arms. Inside, in careful 19th century script, the liber must be removed for safe keeping after the fire. Place it in Armadio 42, where it will remain undisturbed. Your grandmother's note burns in your pocket, the same number, the same promise of something hidden. And there, pressed into the red wax, barely visible, unless you hold it to the light at just the right angle. A tiny key, wreathed in grapevines. The pattern aligns like stars into constellation. Your grandmother's brass key, the cardinal's wax seal, the number 42 that appears in no public catalogue. This isn't about the Borgias anymore, not really. This is about what the church chose to hide, what they decided was too dangerous even for their secret archives. A preservation disguised as concealment, protection that looks like suppression. The documents aren't just speaking now, they're screaming, and their voice carries 5 centuries of silenced truth. The PR email arrives at dawn, crafted with the precision of a Vatican diplomat who's forgotten that truth exists outside messaging. We'd like to offer broader context for your research. It begins, each word a silk glove over an iron fist. They request an embargo, suggest a collaborative approach, remind me of the Church's commitment to responsible historical dialogue. I forward it to my lawyer without comment. She responds with a single line: spin versus scans. Keep scanning. Professor Monteverdi's Twitter thread goes viral within hours. On modern hysteria and the Borgia myth, why amateur researchers endanger historical integrity. He doesn't name me. He doesn't have to. Every academic in our field knows who he's targeting. Sensationalism, he writes, has replaced scholarship. The irony tastes metallic, coming from the man who presented my research as his own. I screenshot every tweet, file them under deflection, professional, and return to my documents. Let him perform his anxiety in 280 character increments. I have receipts that speak in centuries. The universe itself seems to conspire in small resistances. The scanner in Ferrara jams 3 times, eating one crucial page that takes 4 hours to carefully extract. DHL misroutes the XRF report to Ferrara instead of Florence. 7 days lost in Italian August when everything moves like honey. The notary I need for authenticating Nonna's documents is on Ferragosto leave until September. Patience, his secretary says, as if I haven't been practicing patience like a religion for months. I pace my breathing, 4 counts in, hold, 4 counts out, and adjust the calendar again. Flexibility is just another form of determination. Money hemorrhages with surgical precision. The E&O insurance policy binds at $1,200, protecting me from defamation claims that could reach 6 figures. My lawyer's retainer, $3,000, half already burned through cease and desist responses and document review. The XRF analysis takes exactly 14 days, confirming what I already suspected. Iron gall ink consistent with 1890s production. The annotation about removing for safekeeping was definitely added after the original 1897 letter. Science validating instinct, chemistry confirming conspiracy. The Vatican reading room becomes my 3-hour daily prayer. No bags allowed. They search you like airport security, but for pens instead of weapons. Pencils only, and they must be their pencils, marked with Vatican stamps. 3 hours maximum, no exceptions, no extensions, even if you're mid-sentence in a crucial passage. I learn to read faster, transcribe in a shorthand I invent specifically for this purpose. My fingers cramp into claws by the 2nd hour, but I don't stop, can't stop. The documents might disappear tomorrow, claimed for conservation or private review. The insurer's binder is 200 pages of exclusions and conditions. My attorney's red-lined notes fill the margins. Verify this, document that, never claim without 3 sources. The XRF Spectra printout looks like a heartbeat, peaks and valleys, describing molecular truth. My spreadsheet shows the bleeding. €1,842 in cumulative archive fees, not counting travel. Not counting the nights in cheap hostels that smell like industrial disinfectant and other people's desperation. Every receipt filed, every expense documented. Calm documentation while they practice noisy deflection. The meeting request comes through official channels, not an email but a formal letter on Vatican letterhead, delivered by courier. A conversation, they call it, an opportunity for dialogue. My lawyer wants to refuse, but I know better. Sometimes you have to walk into the light to show you're not afraid of burning. The room they choose speaks volumes, not the formal reception hall, but a small side chamber where afternoon sun filters through old glass, casting rainbow fragments across marble worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. The Monsignor who enters looks tired in the way of men who have spent decades managing other people's faith. His eyes are kind, though, and when he mentions collecting Caravaggio postcards, I see the human underneath the collar. He quotes Augustine, "The truth is like a lion. You don't have to defend it. Let it loose. It will defend itself." And I wonder if he knows he's arguing my case. I place everything on the table with deliberate care. The family envelope, yellowed with age. Nonna's brass key, catching light like a promise. The Ferrara deed with its damning pharmacy transfer. The Simanca's dispatch, confirming Cantarella as court reality, not folklore. My hands don't shake. My voice doesn't waver. The boundary I draw is clean as a scalpel cut. I will publish primary text with full provenance. The Church is invited to add context, to provide commentary, but not to veto, not to silence. Dialogue versus deletion. They can choose which side of history to stand on. Your grandmother, the Monsignor says quietly, and I see he's already run the genealogy, already knows what I'm about to confirm. The 30-day notarial process using her death certificate and an auto notorio, a declaration of notorious facts, led me to a safe deposit box in a bank that merged with 3 others since 1897. The key fit. Inside, the Cardinal Secretary's carbon copy and a notarized receipt listing the Liber Speseria. The book of the pharmacy, removed to Armadio 42 for safekeeping. The smoking gun isn't smoking. It's a pharmaceutical ledger hidden for over a century. Because it proved what the Church couldn't afford to admit. The Borgias ran their poison like a business, and the Church knew. The Monsignor exhales, a sound that carries the weight of institutional exhaustion. We need time, he says. 2 weeks, I reply, and a footnote acknowledging your review. He nods slowly, understanding the transaction. I'm not asking for permission anymore. I'm offering participation. There's a difference, and we both know it. I slide the documents back across the marble table, but they stay in the light. The afternoon sun making the old ink glow like it's still wet, still recording truths that refuse to stay buried. The brass key goes back in my pocket, heavier now with purpose fulfilled. The Monsignor stands, straightens his cassock, and for a moment I see not the institution but the man, carrying the weight of centuries of necessary lies. Your grandmother would be proud, he says, and I know he means it. She knew you'd hidden it, I reply. She also knew someone would eventually care more about truth than comfort. He doesn't dispute this. How could he? The evidence sits between us, speaking in a voice that 5 centuries couldn't silence. The sun shifts, and suddenly the whole room fills with that particular Roman light that makes even ugly truths look beautiful. Or maybe that's just what resolution feels like. Not revenge, but revelation. Finally released into the light it was always meant to find. The dossier goes live at midnight Rome time, when the city sleeps, but the internet never does. Every page annotated with the obsession of someone who knows what erasure feels like. Footnotes that could be evidence in court, image credits that follow Vatican reproduction policies to the letter, citations that would make a lawyer weep with relief. The timeline runs clean as a surgical cut. Here's what we can prove happened. Here's what people claimed happened. Here's where they diverge. Rumor versus record, mythology versus merchant ledgers. Each document tagged with its archive number, its retrieval date, its chain of custody preserved like evidence at a crime scene. The church's statement arrives 6 hours later, clearly crafted by someone who stayed up all night. We acknowledge gaps in the historical record and pledge a comprehensive review of relevant holdings. Measured, careful, almost elegant in its refusal to admit wrongdoing while admitting everything. They know what I know. The Liber Spezeria exists, hidden in Armadio 42. And pretending otherwise would only sharpen the blade I've already drawn. We've reached our détente. Corrections welcomed if documented, interference declined and documented if attempted. The revenge I might have wanted dissolves into something harder and cleaner, a ledger of facts that speaks louder than any accusation. I register the digital object identifier, that modern form of immortality, 5281/Zenodo, 8,474,829. Ensuring these documents will outlive us all. The open repository accepts my files with the democracy of ones and zeros, metadata tagged, checksums verified. A Creative Commons licensed. The legal appendix runs 12 pages, knotting every reproduction restriction, every Vatican policy. Every article of Italian cultural heritage code that applies. Let them try to claim I didn't follow rules. I followed them so precisely that my compliance becomes its own form of rebellion. The boundaries are clear now, carved in digital stone and legal precedent. No one can unpublish this truth. No one can slide my name off this work. The system that tried to erase me has become the system that preserves my proof. Tell me, what boundary did you enforce this year? When did you use silence as a shield instead of letting it be used to erase you? Sometimes the greatest rebellion is simply refusing to disappear. The quiet after publication feels like the silence between heartbeats. I return Nonna's brass key and the Cardinal's envelope to a climate-controlled deposit box, temperature and humidity monitored. Because these artifacts deserve better than a drawer. They're evidence now, not just of Borgia business, but of institutional memory. of the way truth gets hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone with the right key and the right rage to find it. The past preserved properly this time, not buried but protected. The digitization grant I fund is small, 5,000 euros carved from the advance on my book deal, but targeted. Women archivists in small Italian cities, the ones who guard documents no one thinks matter until suddenly they do. They'll scan 17th century merchant records, 19th century correspondence, the kind of mundane documents that become extraordinary when you know what questions to ask. Past versus future, locked rooms versus open stacks, the democracy of accessible truth. Each scan a small door opening, a tiny rebellion against the gatekeepers who think history belongs only to them. The plan ahead crystallizes, a companion study on ambassadorial letters, where diplomats accidentally recorded truth while crafting lies. A micro-series, 10 episodes, 15 minutes each, on building receipts-first cases without theatrics. How to read between lines, how to find the archives they don't advertise, how to make silence speak. The house lights dim on this act, but I hear keys turning in new locks. I feel the weight of doors not yet opened, but no longer impossible. The same ribbon of afternoon light that revealed truth in that Vatican side room now falls across my desk in Florence. The same patient click of keys, but now they're mine to turn, my laptop keys typing truth. My archive requests approved, my name on every document I touch. The rhythm of revelation continues, methodical as a heartbeat, certain as sunrise. Each document I free makes the next imprisonment harder to maintain. I think of that conference room where my research was presented without my name. That reading room where I was told I wasn't on the list. Those men probably sleep well, thinking they won, thinking I've been properly managed. They don't understand what they've actually done. They've transformed me from a researcher into an archivist of their sins, from a scholar into evidence itself. I wasn't invited into their story. I became the record. The brass key sits in its climate-controlled box, but I don't need it anymore. I've learned to pick locks with patience, break doors with documentation, dissolve walls with properly cited facts. Every woman who's been erased from a discovery she made, every researcher told to let others handle the complicated parts, every scholar whose name disappeared between draft and publication, we're all keys now, turning in locks they thought would hold forever. The Vatican's bells ring the hour, and somewhere in Armadio 42, the Liber Speseria waits in its century of darkness. But darkness only matters if no one remembers where the light switches are. And I've left maps, coordinates, DOI numbers, and digital breadcrumbs for the next woman who arrives at a locked door. Holding a key, everyone swears opens nothing. Some doors aren't meant to be opened. They're meant to be eliminated, one properly documented fact at a time. And that's not revenge. That's revolution, archived and indexed for permanent retrieval.